Good day, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about basic prepping and just go through a thought exercise today. Especially, I want to be talking to new preppers who may just be starting out and some things to think about when you're building up your stocks and some of the economics behind it all. Stay tuned. So welcome back, everybody. So looking again at prepping and what we do in building up stocks to be prepared. And it's always starting with water as our basic, right? Water is one of it is the essential beginning of any of anything we do, because without water you're dead. Obviously air is important, but you can only go a few days without water and you're going to be out of function before you even get around to worrying about being hungry. So water is a staple in any beginning prepper's repertoire to get started on a kit, in your preparedness kit, or even in a something that you're building to be prepared to bug out or whatever. Water, it's very cheap at this point in time. It's something that is readily available for right now, so it's easy to get a hold of. The only problem with water is it's bulky. I mean, obviously this is a gallon, very cheap. A gallon is only basically a day's worth for an individual. It's part of a planning factor that you can use, but it is very bulky and it adds up quick. It takes up a lot of room, and that's going to be one of the factors we talk about here. After water, we're obviously going to get into food. Basic food. Canned goods are always a go-to. Again, something simple, relatively inexpensive, easy to get a hold of. Basic meal in a can, easy to go with. Very inexpensive, but again, it is bulky. It takes up room and space, and most, especially young preppers, when starting off in apartments, small locations, the canned goods take up space quickly. Eventually you run out of room, right? And then you just add in the other things that we consider essential, to stock up on: ammo, more canned goods. It's an ongoing cycle to be more ready, more sustainable, more self-sustainable, and really, at some point, we all, I think, get to the point to where we realize we are starting to run out of room. We get our essentials, we get into some comfort items, coffee, some more staples like salt, something that you would need to have in your pantry for more long term, and these things start to build up. We get further along in our prepping, and we start adding big jugs like this. Big old container of beans, rice, whatever it may be, and it all adds up. And the biggest thing about this is scale and size. You're going to be prepping for your needs, no doubt. Getting what you need, and it's always kind of the mindset that more is better, obviously, but everybody has a limit. You're always going to come to a point to where I can't stockpile anymore. I run out of ammo cans to put ammo in. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's not possible. But there's a limit to these things. There is a economy of scale that you start to lose at a certain point when you have, depending on the size of and the nature of what you're dealing with, and all these things lead to what I would consider the next evolution, and what people really need to think about when you hear people talk about the next stage in prepping and having all your essentials. You'll often hear You'll often hear about going with precious metals and silver and gold. And this is really where they become a force multiplier. Maybe is that the right word? They're a store of wealth. That's one of the essential definitions of silver and gold, is that they store wealth in a small package. You look at what's out here on the table, and that's not even, that's a few essentials that, this obviously could last a long time. This is a days of eating, a day of water. You start adding that up and it's days and days and days. But what value is represented here? Under current dollar terms, we're going to use dollar terms because it's hard to rationalize in any other. We could talk calories. We could talk, shotgun shells bring in an X amount of food or protection. There's things that you can weigh these things different ways, but we'll talk dollars for the purposes of this. This is 15 or so pounds of beans that really is relatively inexpensive, especially in today's dollar terms. A lot of foodstuffs, a lot of dry goods, you can get relatively inexpensive, but they do become bulky and hard to store. Especially once you get to that limit, really your store of wealth is going to be your precious metals. And that's just one way to think about them. Don't think about them as, yes, they are money. Yes, they can be bartered and traded. But once you are in a rotation, you're rotating your canned goods, you have a pantry set up that's rotating, you can't expand it out. You stuffed water and ramen noodles or whatever else in the back of your back closet in your third room, or whatever process you're going through. This is going to be your store of wealth that you can't do with the other things. Yes, you cannot eat it. But from what I got 5-6 years ago, I can turn it around and get more food at this time if for whatever reason I either expand my storage or whatever. Now, we could always go into, obviously, the Federal Reserve note. The Federal Reserve note is a part of your being prepared, right? Having cash on hand to be able to purchase with. But we could talk about inflationary value for days. And we've had food inflation that we could talk about too, how containers get smaller in portions, food portions get smaller, but yet they cost more. Hidden food inflation, but we won't get into that. But the store of value you get is something to consider when you're really getting your mind wrapped around why you would buy gold or silver. Gold or silver, this quarter ounce. So quarter ounce gold is about the same value as that quarter ounce is about the same value as a roll of silver coins, roughly speaking, at current values. So an extreme condensed store of value that can be converted in the future, hopefully, for anything else. But what do all these represent? And another way to think about this, all these represent your labor, your current labor you put in to being able to get the items that you need. Really, I think when I started transitioning into preparedness and valuing things, it had to really get into how much work do I have to put in to get items, and having conservation of effort so that I can get the maximized value, obviously, but not just in dollar terms. How many hours of labor that I currently work at, the hours that I put into getting, whether it's these items, vehicle, any other, or luxury items for that matter, not necessarily prepper items, but also the other items that you just get on a daily basis to, just living your life to help evaluate the value of things. The labor you put into them is really the true value, not this value or even one of these values. somebody might pay you those things to do labor, but ultimately it's the hours you put in and your time that is more valuable than anything. And so whatever you do, these are representing that labor in the long run, and less labor you have to do in the long run as well. These are storing your labor away for a day where you may not be able to work as hard or work as much to get a hold of these, because maybe your labor is not there, your labor is not as valued, depending on the job that you have. You may be put out of work or whatever, so that you have to dip into these things because your labor is currently not valued, and you have to find a new job or whatever, or in an ultimate collapse scenario where you have these stores of wealth that you can convert, and maybe having to pay somebody else for labor. Who knows? Many things, and just something to think about, especially for new preppers, and thinking about why gold and silver when you can't eat them. that's the line you always hear. You can't eat them. You can't. It doesn't have a purpose, but it is a store of value, and especially real ultimate Mad Max scenario. You go Mad Max, these may not necessarily maintain that value, but they will still be there. An ounce of gold, an ounce of silver will always be an ounce of silver. If somebody puts a value on it, it'll have a value. A gallon of water will always be a gallon of water. This may not be anything ever, except for a novelty piece at some point in the future. That is really, when I go back and I've got my video when I first got my first stack of silver, when I converted my IRA and got out of paper markets and being in that club and converting to something that I could hold on to, for one, but that is always going to be there. It's going to be what it is. It's not going to be something that somebody else says what it is, and in comparison to everything else. And that was one thing that was really critical, I think, in my development and understanding the value of everything, not just the value of these things, but of everything. And that ultimately it's what I work for to get these things. The work I put in to it is more valuable than what you get out of that labor, which is unfortunately represented by pretty much nothing. And they're making it worse because they give it to you on a computer in digits, mostly in 99% of the jobs out there. What we do daily, it doesn't even come to us like this. It shows up on a computer as digits, and we don't even get anything physical in the real. And that stuff can disappear like that. And I've done many videos on the economic situation, and really what got me really concerned and going much harder on the prepping side, but in particular on the stacking side, was the economic situation and the peril we are being put in on the daily. But when you think about how many cans I can save up, how much dry goods I can save up, how many gallons of water I can save up, the value that is currently placed on it, it can retain a certain value over time, but I can condense that all down to one of these stores of wealth when I run out of room. And that's really, when you talk about having that, maybe not extra cash, but it's your savings. I look at this as savings. It's the same, like I said, I got out of an IRA and into metals because I didn't want to be involved in this game, and I can hold on to this and it'll always be mine. It's not, well, they guess they can physically confiscate it, but it doesn't end up on a computer and easily removed from my hands, and it's not devalued by the actions of some bank like these paper bills are. And just like our labor is devalued as they continue to inflate that, but yet you don't get paid more. So you can buy more of these things for your labor. It really comes down to that hour of labor. And these things much better represent that labor than this. And while these are good to have, because people trade them and people will exchange goods and services with these readily, it's not a good store of value. It devalues over time. A $50 bill, think about it, a $50 bill from 1950 is still only going to get you $50. A silver coin, An ounce of silver coin was what? Maybe a 75 cents. Well, I guess it would have been $1 at the time. Well, a silver coin was $1 at the time. I believe that's right. 4 quarters equaled a silver ounce by weight, even the content. Now that's worth roughly $15. What was $1 then at that time? It has maintained value with the weight of the silver, the content of the metal. So it stores the value. That's really the gist, importance of it. And it still allows you to provide that value and convert it into the necessary items, water, food, even now to this day. And potentially in a transitional crisis, I would say it probably will. Maybe not in the Mad Max, but that is the, I wouldn't say the least likely scenario, but it is the in the lower percentile of most likelies. When you look at the economic situation, we're more likely to transition from one economic system to another, and these will still hold value, while if you hold tens of thousands of dollars in this, it could quickly be wiped out. Just see Venezuela, any other number of current paper currency economic systems. So that's just some thoughts on why prepping as we build and stockpile, why silver and gold play such a critical part, because you do run out of space. They do compact down into something that represents many, 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 many more gallons and stored up dry goods that you can't currently hold on to, but yet you can potentially have in the future in this small little case, an even smaller case here in the case of gold. But that is very expensive. And it is, it's not divisible at that point. But you never know. And I think that's really when I look at why I stack precious metals, it's because I'm starting to run out of room to put stuff. I only have so many ammo cans. Well, I still have empty ones, but they only fit in so many places. And as you bring in those things that, gasoline, 5-gallon cans, a lot of people, especially if you're in a small compact apartment, things like that, smaller homes, a lot of preppers, as you progress into a space, just as I've done here on this channel, we've progressed into a space where we can expand. I guess you could call it still accumulation of stockpiled items, equipment, clothing, just all the things that you could think of in different scenarios to have that, so that you can be functional, but really in the basics. And in the end, this is always still convertible to any of those things that you might need. So that's just my thoughts, folks. I just wanted to maybe present the precious metals argument in a different light than some people have, but in comparison to, really it's up to how you work for it and get it on your table that matters. A lot of people put a lot of different values on a lot of these different things depending on the situation. When things get bad, that coffee for some people is more important than anything else. You know the deal. If you had if I had a bottle of hard liquor, alcohol, some bourbon or something, that might be more valuable for somebody on other occasions. But and food is more valuable to some people. They'll do a lot more potentially on one day than they will for that 99 cents that I paid for it. On one day, so it has a different value for somebody because of their need for it. But ultimately, they all store a value at some point. So, just my thoughts, something to think about. Hours, labor put into it, and how everything stores value, and really the ultimate, like why they've been kept as money over time, is because they do store value, unlike paper. So, just some thoughts, YouTube. Comments below. Let's hear what people have to say. How does your strategy work out with this? And just thinking about it in those terms. Anybody got any comments on that? So, it'd be good to see some good comments. So, if you know what to do, YouTube, go out, live free.